So continuing the low star legend series, because FGO does not have a whole lot going on at the moment, especially over on the JP version of the game. At least on the NA version, you have extra time to kind of finish up Little Big Tengu, but overall, until we start getting some of these other events, not a whole lot going on, nothing super exciting, so we'll move on to the assassin class. And I went ahead and I put it up to a poll, I put it up to a vote over on my community tab, and I'm not surprised that Serenity won because she's really cute. But it's really funny to me personally because she's a single target arts assassin that's really free to play friendly, and she's actually kind of good, decent after she gets her buff with the new Grail live event that should be coming out relatively soon. But it's just funny to me because there is another free to play friendly single target arts assassin that is definitely better than Serenity, and that's 100 Personas, but I definitely get why Serenity won. Again, she's cute. And I imagine there's a lot of people that want to know how good she actually is. Like, is she one of those servants that, like, sure, she might not be the best, but is she at least usable? Can I at least run her in team comps and she won't, like, get me absolutely obliterated? And I'll say, yeah, you can. You can definitely get some mileage out of Serenity, as we'll talk about in today's video. But again, just really funny to me because 100 Personas is right there, and they're kind of like the same exact servant, except her 100 Personas is just better, right? Before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that daily FGO content. Also, if you want to see me play FGO and other games live, I do that over on my Twitch, which is linked down in the description down below. And I usually start streaming at about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you don't want to miss out on any extra bonus content, make sure you're hitting up that link down in the description down below. Also, for this low star legend series, I know that I did kind of mess up and I did Medusa in this rotation, and then I also did Boudica. That's just a little bit of a goof on my part. If you're new to this series and you don't know what I'm talking about, basically I do a 3-star or lower servant and I go in order of class. I'll go like Saber, Archer, Lancer, etc. But because it's been like kind of a little bit since I've done this series, I kind of forgot and I did Boudica while I already also did Medusa. So I don't know, bonus extra rider, I suppose. But with all that being said, let's start actually moving into the actual meat and potatoes of this servant, starting off with her hits. And because Serenity is a year 1 servant, you'd expect her hits to not be super great, but she did actually release like later into year 1, around the time of Camelot coming out, where they kind of started learning how to actually design servants and actually make their hits not all that bad. And so when you look at Serenity's hits, they're actually pretty decent. She's got really nice quick and arts cards with 3 hits on both of those. She's got a 5-hit extra attack because she's an assassin. Her star gen is absolutely insane at 25.6% plus the passive 10.5% that she also has. So she can drop you some nice stars, and you can use those stars on her arts cards, which you're going to actually need because 3 hits is pretty decent, but her NP gain is really low at 0.53%, so you're really going to need to get crits on those arts cards if you want to refund any type of NP with this servant. Thankfully, with her Grail live buff, that actually does get a little bit easier. We'll talk about that on her 3rd skill as we start getting into some of her skills, but she's actually one of those servants that didn't get treated too harshly as a year 1 low star rarity servant. If you've been keeping up with the series, some of these servants got off pretty bad when it came to their hits, but Serenity is actually pretty fine in that department when you're looking at all of her hits and everything. And so it sets her up that like in the future, if they want to start giving her crazier and crazier buffs, she can actually kind of take advantage of those. Now, moving into some of her skills, starting off with skill 1, this is definitely one that needs to get buffed in the future. It has some viability now, like it's not terrible. Being able to reduce one enemy's critical attack chance by 20% for 3 turns is kind of nice, but it's really being able to reduce their NP gauge by 1 that gives you a little bit of control on when the opponent is going to fire the NP. That is kind of nice, but for being on a 7-turn cooldown, it's not all that impressive, especially because it's only one enemy's critical attack chance by 20%. That's a little power crept, right? I've mentioned here on some of the other servant videos that reducing enemy critical attack chance is actually pretty good. It's one of those things that like if it's tacked on to a really good skill, it can be really nice. But when it's kind of like the central thing that the skill is doing, even taking up the skill icon, it can be a bit underwhelming, right? Because preventing yourself from getting obliterated by crits is obviously very, very strong, but you need more to it. And especially if it's one person by 20%, that's not all that solid. Like if it was party-wide 30%, then you're going to start being able to feel that, especially in conjunction with other servants that also reduce enemy critical attack chance. But thankfully they did tack on the reduction of the enemy's NP gauge. This is very solid because it gives you an extra form of survivability. Keep in mind that she is an art servant, meaning that you're probably going to be using her with Castoria, and one of the few things that Castoria doesn't provide to you is an ability to kind of shut down the enemy's NP. She gives you a lot of like actual survivability for yourself, but let's say you get all of your buffs removed from yourself, Serenity at the very least is providing something to that team comp because she can at least interact with the enemy and remove some of their NP gauge that's not affected by getting all of their buffs removed, because that's going to become more and more common as we start moving through FGO. A lot of these bosses are going to be like, oh, on break bar, I'm about to yeet all of your buffs off of you. So that's kind of nice, but I would like to see them definitely upgrade this skill, because that neat little bit of interaction isn't quite enough to save this skill and justify not buffing it. Honestly, if it was like something that also reduced the enemy's art's resistance or something along those lines, maybe lowered their defense a little bit, that could actually help her out quite a bit. Maybe even throw in like a 30% battery for herself. Stuff like that could be very good if they decided to go that direction. But for now, it's usable in the fact that it reduces their NP gauge, but let's definitely throw something on their Lysengo going forward. Moving on to her second skill, this is really just for her like poison niche that she has going on. You're going to be inflicting poison to one enemy for 5 turns and then hitting them with toxic. So basically they're hit with super poison. They're taking even more damage from that poison damage. But what you're probably actually going to use this for is just to bomb 15 stars on a 4-turn cooldown. She's pretty good at genning stars in her own right. Like pretty much every assassin can at least decently gen stars, but this is going to also make sure that like every couple of turns you're going to be able to bomb some extra stars and make sure that you're remaining topped off so you can keep doing crits. That's also one of the few things that Serenity does lack. She does not have any critical damage buffs, spoiler alert, aside from maybe if you count the 10% she gets from her passive. And so maybe that's also something they could incorporate going forward, either like a special damage mod against poisoned enemies or just some like really big crit damage buffs, because as it stands right now, she's not really taking advantage of this poison gimmick that she's got going on. And it's really unfortunate because you have other servants that do take advantage of that. I mean, even look at somebody as basic as Robin Hood, right? Robin Hood hits somebody with poison and then bada boom, bada bing, smacks him for big damage. And that guy came out with the game. Like he's an on-release servant. So we can definitely do better moving forward. Even at something as small as like a 50% special damage mod against poison enemies, that could definitely be really, really strong. Or maybe they want to go the Muramasa route, right? Where Muramasa gets extra crit damage if somebody has like invincibility or dodge. Maybe she's like, if they're poisoned, she gets like 100% crit damage or something really insane. Because as it stands right now, you're just going to be using it for extra stars. Now, her third skill is definitely a really solid step in the right direction, because beforehand it was like, oh, here's like some insta-kill, which isn't super great. Here's some debuff success rate. That can be really good if we're taking advantage of the poison, but since we're not really using the poison for anything really substantial, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. But then they decided to give her a 30% arts buff for 3 turns. You'll notice that's like actually the first form of damage she's actually getting. And then they give her an on-attack buff, where anytime she attacks using her arts cards, she hits the enemy with poison. And since this is her most recent buff, it kind of fills me with some faith that they're going to take advantage of this poison niche that she does have going on here. But definitely the arts buff, huge step in the right direction, because it's giving her actual damage. It's buffing up the NP gain of her arts cards, which, you know, as I was mentioning earlier, because her natural NP gain is so low, it does help her out kind of a lot to be getting a 30% arts buff to buff up the NP gain there. And again, it's what I think actually kind of makes Serenity usable, because right now, before Grail Live, she does like absolutely no damage. But now that you do get this buff in like, say, a month or two with the Grail Live event, Serenity can actually do some damage, right? Like she can actually kind of hit pretty decently hard, not insanely hard or anything. Again, she's still going to need like an extra like attack buff or something else thrown in there for her to do some really serious damage, but she's actually on the chart now. Like she can actually do a little bit of damage while also buffing up her NP gain, which is definitely helping her out a lot. Finally, let's just go ahead and close out with the NP here, because I think the NP is actually pretty solid. Now, I know a lot of people are going to look at that 40% chance to seal their skills and NP. Even though they're both separate procs, they're probably not going to think it's very good, but do remember, she at least is giving herself that debuff success rate on her third skill, so she is drastically buffing up the chance that she'll be able to reduce the enemy's ability to like fire NPs at you or use a bunch of annoying skills. That's actually pretty nice. But again, you see the poison thing over here. We're doing so much with poison, but we're not really getting anything out of it, right? I would love to see them be like, if the enemy's poisoned, you get like a 50% special damage mod, or if they're poisoned, you know, they have their arts resistance lowered by 20%. If they're poisoned, you get 100% crit damage against them. Just something along those lines could definitely help Serenity out a lot. Because the final effect here, the insta-kill thing, like that's kind of good if you need to insta-kill like some big bronze or even like a silver enemy. That can be kind of nice, but really if you're going to be bringing her into more difficult content because she is a single target servant, and that's predominantly where you're going to bring your single targets, you're really never going to get to use that, right? Because predominantly you're going to be fighting some big like gold enemies or servants, something along those lines where they rarely get insta-killed. But I guess my final judgment for Serenity is that after Grail Live, she becomes like a usable servant, right? Like you can actually use her if you want to just use Serenity because you think she's cute. But if Lasengel ever just gives her some way to take advantage of those poison buffs that she's giving, because she pretty much just for free can smack anybody with poison. She does it on like 3 different effects. Let's just find a way to actually take advantage of it, and then we're actually going to be cooking, right? That's kind of just my final note on Serenity. I think she already does do some pretty good things, like being able to reduce the enemy's NP, being able to seal their NP, seal their skills, and even though it looks like they're low chances, she does buff her debuff success rate, so that definitely helps her out. The arts buff was absolutely killer, not only buffing up her damage, but also buffing up her NP gain, which she did need. I just think she needs a few things here and there. Predominantly, again, take advantage of the poison, and then maybe like, say, another form of damage, or even something just like a 30% battery. Something along those lines could be really, really good. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.